Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for our Saturday upgrade and commander build video. I'm looking at the Scharnhorst 43, where today we're going to overlook the modules, the upgrades, the combat signals, consumables, armament, and the commander itself, which I'm going to show you two different commanders for us to look at, as my screen just flipped there. We're going to look at two different commanders. One is Gunther Lutjens, and then I'm going to show you another commander. I like trying to illustrate some options with our commanders, right? And probably the other commander versus how I have Lutjens spec would be best. But we'll start off with Lutjens briefly when we get to that point, because that is who I had on the ship in yesterday's game. So, in talking about the Scharnhorst 43, let's first talk about what type of battleship is she. And as I said in yesterday's video on the Friday highlight, close quarters, please. Scharnhorst 43 compared to Scharnhorst or Scharnhorst B. Scharnhorst 43 really excels in the brawling, with her secondaries being 9.5 maximum range. If you're playing more 12 kilometers and out, like Scharnhorst 43 is much more frustrating to play. Scharnhorst 43 is much more frustrating to play than just Scharnhorst. So you want to be brawling, you want to be close quarters as much as possible. But of course that comes with some difficulties, which we'll talk about in talking about with the commander. But in terms of your armor layout, you have a 26mm forend and aft in plating here on the ship, including the deck, where the midsection is actually 45. On the deck it's 50mm, which comes down to a 45mm. Then we come down to an armor belt of 350mm. Then you see a 260, a 260 with torpedo protection, and then also 32mm protection there. So as we begin to take away some of the armor here for us to see more of the Citadel, it has the typical turtleback armor scheme protecting the Citadel. So hard to Citadel a Scharnhorst 43, but possible to get lots of penetrations, like an enemy battleship, so on and so forth. And when you're looking at the Citadel, it does become up just above waterline, but it slopes in as it hits the waterline. So possible to maybe bounce. It's just, you see this deck slope of 105mm. So it's pretty strong overall with the plating on the Citadel. So it can be difficult to Citadel enemy Scharnhorst. I think I rarely ever have. And then looking at our main battery guns, you have 360mm frontal plates, then 220 on the side, 150 on the top, and 130 on the very top, where the back of the turret has 220. So of course, what's typical is that the front of your gun mount armor is the strongest, and that is indeed the case here. And the last thing I do want to point out is the torpedoes. As we come in on him here, on them, they are exposed and out, so that is something you have to keep in mind when you have enemy ships that are likely going to be shooting, kind of at this area, so to speak. So it's possible to have your torpedoes incapacitated, and we'll talk about how to build into them and try to help prevent that from happening. Alright, so going into looking at the modules, so there's no upgraded modules to have, but this reflects what we have currently built on the ship and the commander itself, and some of these specs will change when we flip commanders. But we have a reload time of 23 seconds, 180-degree turn time of 25 seconds. These are 283s, so they're not like as long as maybe some of those 305s and larger caliber battleship guns you see. So it doesn't take a very large amount of time per se to turn these. HE shell damage 3200, maximum AP shell damage 7600. Here on the hull we have 56,300 hit points. This is a secondary brawling battleship, so we have a decent amount of secondary gun turrets between 105mm and 150mm guns, and we have 6 torpedoes, 3 on each side, and then we have some AA. The torpedoes themselves, they have a 45-second reload time, so it's one of the perks, one of the strengths of the Scharnhorst 43 over Scharnhorst or Scharnhorst B, because of these torpedoes reloading much faster. I have to double check here with the regular Scharnhorst. 68 seconds versus 45 seconds. So that is a big bonus here. They do 6-kilometer range, 13,700 damage, 64 knots with a 1.3 kilometer detectability range. Main battery firing range, a little shorter than the Scharnhorst and Scharnhorst B. You have 18.9 kilometers, but you ideally really don't want to be playing Scharnhorst 43 at long ranges if you can help it. Propulsion, 160,000 horsepower, and you can already see with some of our combat signals mounted, we have Sarah mic flag. So if I take that off, it'd be 30 knots, and then with it will be 31.5 knots. Moving along to our modules, in the first slot we have the main armaments mod 1. This reduces the risk of our main battery and our torpedoes from becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. So that is really good to have here on the Scharnhorst 43. And then the main battery and torpedo tube survivability plus 50%, torpedo tubes repair time, and main battery repair time if either those should be knocked out, negative 20%. Very good to have. You can also talk about investing more into the secondaries if you want to improve the secondary battery survivability, plus 100%. That is definitely an option here. I do take it on some of the other German battleships, but kind of with that calling card of those torpedoes reloading so fast, and they can definitely be permanently incapacitated. It does happen to me somewhat regularly, so being able to build more into their survivability and preventing the risk of being incapacitated I quite like, because especially in ranked, as we had in the Friday highlight, really powerful asset when you are brawling in at the close ranges. You're in magazine modification 1. This reduces the risk of your ship's magazine detonating by negative 70%. We just take Julie Charlie combat signal, which completely eliminates the ship chances of detonating, and you do this in ranked randoms clan battles, so we dismount that. You also have damage control party mod 1, and this would extend the consumable action time on your damage control party, so you could push it up over 20 seconds, but I think these two are what you're going to would really want to look at, and myself, I just think the main armaments mod 1 is the best of the 4 options here. The second slot, if you're just only able to afford via credits, the damage control system mod 1. This reduces the risk of your catching of fire by negative 5%, risk of flooding negative 3%. This is the best standard upgrade you want to take. If you do have resources in terms of coal, then I would definitely recommend picking up the engine boost modification 1. This increases the consumable action time of your hydro by plus 30%, and you have a plus 15%. It's not a just plus 8%, but a plus 15% action time on your engine boost. And I find the engine boost, one of the Scharnhorst 43's calling cards, to be really helpful. You can already see it's a cooldown time of just a minute and a half, 90 seconds, and an action time of 180 seconds. So we could bump this up. I think it'd be like maybe like 234 seconds. I can pull up my fancy calculator here on my phone as we go look at this special upgrade in the armory. Yeah, 234 seconds is what you would bump the engine duration up to. So that's actually like really good. That's almost like what, 4 minutes of engine boost time. So it's 17,000 Colt. If you do have the coupon, it's 12,750. This resets monthly. So I recommend always to do what you can to pick it up with the coupon. So I buy these once a month. If you're a newer player, it might be a little difficult. It's not necessary, so to speak, on the Scharnhorst 43, but it definitely is something that will help make the ship shine a little bit more. So these are the two main ones we're going to look at. The third slot, she is a brawler. So we want to build into the secondary battery mod 1. Improving the secondary battery firing range by plus 20%, maximum secondary battery shell dispersion reduced by negative 20%, and we're building in our commander to help build into the secondaries further, as well as a combat signal, the Mike Yankee, giving us better shell dispersion, better reload time, and better firing range. So this is what you want to run here. I don't really believe going for the main battery here. If I was going to do a main battery Scharnhorst 43 build, I would do Scharnhorst or Scharnhorst B. And that's tied to the armor piercing shells, which we'll talk about when we get to armament. But Scharnhorst 43 just it begs you, close quarters please. I want to brawl. That's really how this ship plays best in my opinion. Then you could have something like Aiming Systems Mod 1. I think, if I remember right, the Scharnhorst 43 has slightly better horizontal and vertical dispersion, while the other Scharnhorst and Scharnhorst B have a longer main battery gun range. But again, it's not really like going for, because even Scharnhorst and Scharnhorst B have a better main battery reload time than the Scharnhorst 43. So again, a main battery build would be better to do with something like Scharnhorst B. So just go for secondaries. Trust me, it'll be good. And then what we've done here in the fourth slot, quite cheeky. I don't run this on all my German battleships, but I've done it with the Scharnhorst 43, and I think I do it with Prinz Ruprecht and Schlieffen, which is actually, Schlieffen is where I have Gunther Lutjens specifically spec'd for, where time taken to reach full engine power and accelerating, -50%. So this helps you. I think I got some compliments on yesterday's video about nice torpedo dodging. I don't remember, torpedo beats, that's what it's called. It's like, what the heck do we call that here in World of Warships? And dodging some torpedoes. And paired with the engine boost, I'm like, I'm just gonna go with the propulsion mod 1. Now, if you don't really want to go for that, right, you could easily take the damage control system mod 2, which is pretty standard. This is the standard one you take on your battleships, the German battleships, right? Majority of my German battleships, I run this, except just a small handful. And this reduces your fire and extinguishing time, flooding recovery time, or reduces the fire duration and flooding duration. So you put out the fires, you put out the floods much more quickly. So it's really up to you. But for myself, I like running the propulsion mod 1 specifically because I have the engine boost. Otherwise, I would probably, if it didn't have engine boost, I'd probably just go with the damage control system mod 2. Just in being honest. Armament wise, high explosive shells, reload time 23 seconds, maximum damage 3,200. Chance of causing a fire on a target is 10%. We'll come back and look at this again, and you'll find out why when we go look at our commander. I just have to double check something in my head. Armor penetration capacity is 88 millimeters, initial velocity 890 meters a second, maximum range 18.9 kilometers. So of course, if you're dealing with shores and submarines, particularly, you want to be using the high explosive shells. And then the armor piercing shells. So these do a maximum damage of 7,600, same shell velocity of 890 meters a second. Now, what makes the armor piercing here not as great as the Scharnhorst or Scharnhorst B is that on Scharnhorst 43, your fuse time is standard. It's like 0.033 seconds. So it's the standard fuse time, where on Scharnhorst B and Scharnhorst, they have a short fuse time of like 0.010 seconds, something like that. So what happens here in playing Scharnhorst 43 is that you tend to overpin a lot more cruisers at tier 7, so especially in rank. So playing Scharnhorst 43 is actually a lot more frustrating when you're like, oh, broadside cruiser, I'm gonna delete him, so to speak, and then you just get like 3 overpins, and you're like, what? But when I play Scharnhorst or Scharnhorst B, I don't feel like I get as many overpins, and that's because of the shell fuse time. So again, you don't play Scharnhorst 43 for the main battery build. Like Scharnhorst B are much better in that role. So if you get a lot of overpins, playing Scharnhorst 43 compared to her other 2 sister ships here in the game, then you understand why that is. Torpedoes we've talked about a little bit already, but just to reflect in case you're jumping through the chapters in the video, they have a great reload time of 45 seconds. I believe on the other 2, it's 68 seconds. So this is one of the trump cards, so to speak. You have a Scharnhorst 43 and having fast reloading torpedoes. Like you could fire your starboard torpedoes, turn, fire your port side torpedoes, turn back, and then your starboard torpedoes are almost like ready to go by the time your rudder shift time gets done doing what needs to do, right? So 13,700 maximum damage, 64 knots, 1.3 kilometer tactability range. And then you get the depth charge airstrike, which you saw illustrated in yesterday's video with that pesky submarine in the Bravo cap. We're having a very hard time fishing for it and eventually landing our ISW strikes on him. Reload time of 25 seconds, available flights 2. You have 1 aircraft per flight, 2,000 HP on the aircraft. Maximum range, 9 kilometers, so that's nice. It's not like 8 or 7 or 6, but it's 9, and you go to the higher tiers and you're beginning to see more 10 and 11 as an example. You have 1 bomb in the payload, and maximum bomb damage is 3,400, so it's better than nothing, right? Damage control party, with the build we have set up, this is a 16.5 second action time. I think otherwise it would be 15 seconds. A cooldown time of 80 seconds, and we have unlimited number of charges. With the repair party, we have HP per second plus 281, and again, due to commander perk, we've gone from 28 seconds action time to a 30.8 second action time. Cooldown time 80 seconds, but we go ahead and throw India Delta on. You're playing ranked randoms and clan battles, then you get plus 237, so really good to run India Delta. Engine boost, we get 3 of them and frequently end up running out of them, so another reason why taking engine boost mod 1 would be better, because it just would last you 234 seconds versus what you see here, 180 seconds. Cooldown time 90 seconds, so it doesn't take too long for them to come back off cooldown time, which is quite handy. And then you have your fighters consumable, so I use this more for seeing if, oh, where's that enemy battleship positioned on the other side of the island, which again you saw in yesterday's video with going up against an enemy Scharnhorst. Action time 60 seconds, cooldown time 90 seconds. This will never prevent the first strike Akira drops on you, and you don't get spotter plane like you do on Scharnhorst or Scharnhorst B, but it's still something to have here. Now we can run the November Foxtrot, which reduces the cooldown time. So you see 80 to 76, 80 to 76, 90 to 85.5, 90 to 85.5. Otherwise, with our combat signals, a typical setup of what I'm running is this. This is what I like to run here on Scharnhorst 43, and this is the same thing I had in the Friday highlight video from yesterday. Now, brace yourselves when you go to Commander here. This isn't probably the ultimate option I would recommend for Scharnhorst 43. Especially in ranked, I would probably opt out to one of my other commanders I had built for Preußen in the GK. But alas, here we are. I at least wanted to show you this so you could see what I was running in the Friday highlight video. And this is certainly one option you can run. Now, if you're a newer player, you might be like, why is kind of Flimsy making this disclaimer? And that's really tied to 2 things here. That's not so traditional for a typical German battleship, but I digress. I run him for Schlieffen, and also would do it on Prinz Ruprecht. And it's mainly due to this 2-pointer skill, the inertia fuse for high explosive shells, where your main battery HE shell armor penetration is plus 25% capability, and your secondary battery HE shell armor is plus 25% penetration capability. Chances of causing a fire by HE shells without modifiers applied are reduced by half. So you're limiting your fire starting chance, which reflects in the secondaries and reflects in your main battery, so that you can pin more with the high explosive between your main battery and your secondary guns. And I'll talk about the pros and cons of this, okay? In ranked, I really don't think IFHE Scharnhorst is the best way to go. So let me kind of talk about why. So you have 105s and you have 150s here in your secondary batteries. So what happens is your secondary battery here, you see it penetrates 32 millimeters, and the chances of causing fire is 4% rather than it being 8%. Okay, these 105s are the faster of the reloading secondary battery, 2.7 seconds with the current build. Okay, but armor penetration capacity without IFHE would be 26 millimeter rather than 32 millimeter. So in ranked, you see a lot of 26 millimeter. There's not a lot of 32 millimeter, and at same tier 7, and then you go down to tier 6, of course, you're still going to see a lot of the 26 and less, so to speak, 25. But at tier 7, most tier 7 battleships in the game really don't have much 32 millimeter on them. Now, that is for the most part, except I think there's 2 ships, Nelson, probably the same thing with the Rodney. They have a big fat 32 millimeter nose, but your secondaries, they're targeted to aim, I'm going to put this up, at the center of the enemy ship. So if I'm going broadside to an enemy Scharnhorst, then my secondaries are targeting the center of that ship. That is where they're programmed to aim. So there are some ships in the game at tier 7 that have 32 millimeter. Here you can see, with Flimsy, this Scharnhorst 43 has a 45 millimeter case armor belt, and then you drop down to that 350. So if I go back into with the commander and we look at the secondaries, the 150s, instead of them penetrating, I think it's 38 millimeter, they jump up to 47 millimeter, so you can actually penetrate the broadside armor scheme of a Scharnhorst 43, as an example. And rather than your chance of causing fire on target being 12%, they are now 6%. Now, I don't think IFHE Scharnhorst 43 is like the best option to go for, because then what you end up doing is you give up grease to gears. So then, hence why our main battery stays at the 25-second 180-degree turn time. But another reason why this actually might be decent is when you're playing randoms battle and you run into tier 8 and tier 9. There's so many tier 8 and tier 9 ships, particularly among the battleships, that are just coated in 32 millimeter. So then this is where, you know, having your 105s that reload every 2.7 seconds versus the 150s that reload to 5-6 seconds, where then it's like, maybe I wouldn't mind running IFHE if I'm playing random battles and I'm seeing tier 8s a lot, okay? Otherwise, IFHE is probably pretty overkill if you're just playing it constantly against tier 7s and 6s, as an example. The other thing that I don't like necessarily about this build with the Scharnhorst 43 is we've gone for concealment, right? So our max conceal you can get on a Scharnhorst 43 is 13.7. What would be much better, because, as I said in yesterday's video, close quarters, please, fire prevention expert over the concealment expert would be a much better option in general to take, right? So you won't be, one of the things I do like with the concealment on Scharnhorst 43, again, it comes back to that little engine boost. You can get to capture zones, especially in ranked, a little bit more sooner, and your detectability is less. So you're a little bit more stealthy because you're among one of the fastest battleships at tier 7 to be able to get to these different key objective zones before probably even some of your cruisers, right? Once you've got the engine boost going and keeping up the speed with your friendly teammate destroyer players. So having the concealment just to be cheeky and get into position a little bit more sooner is something that's nice, but on a ongoing basis, you're going to be detected, right? Because you ideally want to be playing, 11 kilometers, 9.5 kilometers, and under. So Fire Prevention Expert is much better, okay? So this is the build that I ran in Friday Highlights video. I'm going to recall Lutjens back to Schlieffen. We're going to come back to Scharnhorst 43, and then without, you see 71 millimeter penetration versus I think 88, and then our chances of causing fire on target is 20%, excuse me. So then now all of our fire chances are going up. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on who I run on my Preußen, my GK, my Pommern, and that's this guy. Now you see that we lose some of the enhanced skills that we had on Lutjens. You see that we also, if I just switch back to Schlieffen, I should have talked about this when he was still on Scharnhorst 43. It's particularly the secondary battery loader. Secondary battery reload time, negative 15% once your secondary battery shells have 100 secondary hits. And then you can get resilient. You spot 3 ships, and then you get a short duration boost to your healing. Like you just automatically, the ship just like, oh, I spotted 3 ships, and then you see a little firework, shoot, and then your ship heals some hit points back, right? And then if you manage to get 140 main battery hits, you would have a shorter reload time. So there's some things here that, like, tie it all together, it's like, oh, I really kind of do like running Lutjens on Scharnhorst 43. But at the same time, overall, I like this commander build for Scharnhorst 43 in general much better than what I'm running with on Lutjens. So now let's break down and talk about these skills. So the first is the preventative maintenance. Risk of modules becoming incapacitated, negative 30%. Secondary survivability, plus 15%. AA mount survivability, plus 15%. And I do have to jump back to this real quick, because with Lutjens, you have a negative 45%, reducing the risk of your secondary battery and or sorry, risk of your modules becoming incapacitated, negative 45%, and you're buffing your secondary and AA survivability by plus 20%. So this helps protect the torpedoes even more so with this skill over what you would see just here reflected on a normal commander who doesn't have these talents, enhanced talents, so to speak. So we might look at some other commanders here, if I remember to, before we close out this video, because there are some other seasoned commanders. Let's just do that now so I don't forget. I want to make sure that, you know, there's these other commanders. Yeah, no, okay, that's what I thought. I was like, I don't think the other commanders have this, but we'll at least look so then I can be honest, and we'll know for certain. Yeah, they just don't have that. So Lutjens is kind of special when he's able to enhance skills on the grease the gears and the preventive maintenance. Okay, I tried, guys. I tried. We were just going to double check here, but it is what it is. So again, there's some other perks you have with Lutjens versus a normal commander. Now, let me stop talking about other commanders and let's just focus on the commander Martin Wittenberg that we do currently have here on Scharnhorst 43. So, as you build up for 21-point commander, at first say preventive maintenance, you need the 1-point skill going along. And so you are helping improve the survivability of your torpedoes, your or risk of them becoming incapacitated, excuse me, and then you're building into survivability of your secondary battery and your AA. But I mean, your AA on Scharnhorst is kind of meh. It's just 56, so it's pretty average and poor. You'll do okay-ish against tier 6s, but tier 8s will own you, I would say. Then for a 3-point skill commander, then grease the gears. So now you're seeing, rather than have a 25-second 180-degree turn time, we have a 20.8-second 180-degree turn time. And that's pretty good, especially if you're brawling the close quarters. That Scharnhorst 43 really likes to do. Then this is like great and helping you out with your main battery turret traverse time. And then if you're like, let's say you're going for a 10-point commander first, then, you know, hey, I would just say have fun, go for the secondaries first. So then for a 6-point commander, take long-range secondary battery shells. And this is what gets you up to that 9.5 kilometer range ultimately when you pair it with the module in the 3rd slot, and then taking the new Mike Yankee combat signal. So do that. And then taking the manual secondary battery aiming skill, you have the permanent effect of your secondary battery reload time, negative 10%, maximum secondary battery shell dispersion, negative 10%, and then over the course over 45 seconds of your secondaries being locked on to an enemy ship, then you'll get an additional negative 50% maximum secondary battery shell dispersion when fired at a priority target, which you like control and then left click right on whatever ship you want your secondaries to focus. This is good. So this is a really good path, starting off with a 10-point build with your Scharnhorst 43. And then it could be next, you're like, hey, for a 13-point build, then I want to go ahead and pick up the Adrenaline Rush. So for each 1% of HP lost, inevitably, while you are brawling against enemy ships, you know, you can have your main battery reloading faster, your torpedoes reloading faster, your airstrike armament reloading faster, your secondary battery reload time even shorter, and your continuous AA damage gets a slight buff. So then you might be looking at, rather than a 23-second main battery reload time, a 22-second, a 21-second, a 20-point-something second reload on your main battery. Secondaries, you know, let's say 2.6, 2.5, 2.4, and then on the 150s, 5.5, 5.4, 5.3 is what you're going to see there. And then your torpedoes, right? So rather than being 45 seconds, maybe they're reloading 45 in 40 seconds, right? Even better. And then after that, so a 13-point commander to a 17-point commander, fire prevention expert. Okay, now the reason why I don't take fire prevention expert on Schlieffen is because you have the fast damage control teams. Shorter duration on the damage control team, and you have a limited number of charges, but they have a very fast reload time. So they're coming off of the reload really fast, and Schlieffen is great for great battleship, battlecruiser, and so concealment makes a lot of sense there. Where, you know, here on Scharnhorst 43, I think overall you're just better off to go with the fire prevention expert. And so talking about this, it reduces the risk of catching fire by negative 10%, maximum number of fires reduced to 1. So without fire prevention, like in yesterday's video when I was running Lutjens, we have 4 fires set on our ship, 1 on our bow, 1 on our stern, and 2 on our superstructure. Okay, what fire prevention does is it eliminates 2 fires on your superstructure, and you can only have 1 on your superstructure, which means you're a little bit more of a tank build. You're not taking as much damage because ultimately you have a sizable superstructure here, and a lot of cruisers, destroyers, they're going to be focusing your superstructure. So you end up taking more damage over time without having fire prevention expert. So having it helps you overall much better. But then without Consumables Expert, you see we are 15.2 kilometer by sea versus 13.7, I think is what we saw earlier. So then from a 17-point commander to a 21-point commander, I would say the Emergency Repair Expert. Damage control party consumable action time plus 10%. You get additional damage control party consumable, but you already have unlimited number here on Scharnhorst 43. Then you have your repair party consumable action time plus 10%, so that's where you saw it go from 28 seconds to 30.8 seconds. And then, for like the damage control party, you saw 15 to 16.5. And then we get a 5th heal, and not just 4 heals. I'm trying to remember in yesterday's video, I think we burned all of our heals. I think we went through all 5 heals because I have this on Lutjens, if I remember right. I think that's correct. So this is a very standard brawling 21-point build commander you see on a lot of the American battleships, you see on a lot of the German battleships. This is pretty much the go-to German secondary build, brawling build. There's nothing wrong with it. But then you have some freedom to play with some of the other German battleships like the Battlecruiser line of Schlieffen, Ruprecht, where you can build into, you're seeing a lot more of a higher armor thickness at tiers 8, 9, and 10 in super ships. So then IFHE with the amazing reload time of the secondaries on Ruprecht and Schlieffen, and then building in the secondaries in the 6th slot. I mean, you're just this little monster with your secondaries on the Schlieffen and Ruprecht as an example. And then you just get that paired with great concealment. So you saw the other commander, Lutjens, we showed here, just 2 different things, having Consume Expert and IFHE, dropping the Grease the Gears in, for this, and Fire Prevention for concealment. But I think overall, this is a much better build in general for most players to be running here on Scharnhorst 43. Because there was some points in the battle yesterday, if I'm being honest, I was getting a little frustrated that I wasn't setting as much fires when I was trying to whittle down that enemy Scharnhorst we were going up against towards the end of the battle. And that's because of me taking IFHE, right? Where we go from a 20% to a 10% on our main battery, we go from a 12% to a 6% on our 150 secondary battery, then we go from an 8% to a 4% on our 105s. So each build kind of has its slight perks and cons, but again, in general, I think the build we have here on Martin Wittenberg here for Scharnhorst 43 and just cycling him out because he's a premium ship, doesn't cost us to move him around because Scharnhorst 43 is a premium ship, I think is the best way to go. So I've gone over 30 minutes, so we're going to cap this video now. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. And if you have a slightly different build here, perhaps on Scharnhorst 43, let me know in the comments what you like running. Or if you have questions about a certain skill I didn't go over. So until next time, take care.